All right, let's go to work. John chapter 18. John chapter 18, 19. Now, you've got to do some work this morning, okay? You've got to do some work. I want you to look in John 18 and 19. I want you to scan it. Don't read it in depth. Just breeze through it. And I want you to tell me the people that you see with or around, standing with or fighting against Jesus. Okay, now I get to name the first one, and so that's Jesus. Now, you don't have to give these to me in order, but give them to me. Who else is there with Jesus?
High priest.
Judas?
Okay, now. With Jesus?
There is Judas. Yeah. Okay, and Brad, you said the high priest? Brad?
Yes, sir.
High priest? Okay.
Soldiers?
Hang on. We'll get the high priest. All right, who's with the soldiers?
Officials?
Yeah, it says officials that have come from the high priest. So I've got soldiers. I've got officials from the high priest. What else?
Pharisees.
I've got officials from the high priest and the Pharisees. I've got who else? Keep reading. You're looking in chapter 18 and 19. And you've got to do the work on this. Tell me somebody you find that's with Jesus, or around Jesus, for Jesus, or against Jesus. I'm not worried about that right now. I just want to know who's there.
Simon Peter.
All right, so there's Peter. All right. Keep going.
The servant.
All right, the servant who got his ear cut off. Somebody tell me his name.
Yeah, Malchus.
All right, so there's a servant. His name is Malchus.
Oh, yeah.
All right, keep going. Oh, hold it. Is his name spelled U-S or A-S?
U.S.
U-S, okay. I thought that was right. Didn't look right. All right, who else?
Annas, Caiaphas.
All right, so when he talks about the high priest, you've got a fellow named Anna, which is kind of an odd name for a high priest, and then his son-in-law, who is Caiaphas. Now, I have the same trouble with that name, so I just gave him a nickname, okay? We're going to write his nickname up here. It's Catfish. He is all mouth and no brains, as Caiaphas do. So, all right? What else? Who else? Chapter 18 and 19. Keep looking. Keep looking. Pilate. All right. All right, keep going. You don't know you're going to. You guys haven't been to church in so long, you forgot you have to work when you come. All right, then you've got somebody that you don't see him, but he's mentioned. We're going to put him over here. Barabbas. All right, keep going. You're looking in John 18. You're looking for any people that are going to be with, around, for, or against Jesus.
The Jews.
Now, that's going to come up several times, so we're just going to put Jews and Jews, bunches of them. All right, keep going. Take your time. I want you to see them. I want you to see all the people around. Because what we tend to do when we read this story is we just read the story and we miss the personalities. We miss the people. Do you see anybody else, Mike?
It said servants.
Okay. So a couple of different times you're going to meet servants. Now there's one that's going to be a servant girl. Let's put her here. She stands at the door of the high priest, and I guess she's like taking tickets. Then if you keep reading, you'll meet a relative of Malchus. All right. Now, I'm going to explain why I'm about to write down cousin. When I go to jail every week and I'm working with the little criminals there, when I start asking them, when I first meet them, I start asking them, who got you into drugs, who got you into porn, who got you into crime, whatever. You know what the answer is 99.999% of the time? They always say a cousin. It's a cousin. So you need to get rid of your cousins. They're trouble, man. But anyway, so this guy, there's a relative of the servant named Malchus, and I'm just going to write up here cousin. Doesn't say cousin, but I just like that story. So, all right. Now you're missing 4 people that are very significant to this story. Don't miss them. Keep looking. Keep looking. Don't give up. Look in chapter. I'm sorry?
Oh, yeah, you did.
I got Pilate.
The servants and officials is.
Yeah, we got servants and officials.
Well, I know, but they're. I don't know that they're the same ones.
Right. Yeah, there's several batches of officials. So
What about Bar?
because Brad's wearing a mask, he should get rewarded for social distancing. So I'm going to do what he wants. So okay, I've got servants. We got bunches of servants, bunches of officials. Are y'all looking at 19? Because there's a passel of them in 19 in one place. In one place.
Joseph.
All right, now after he dies, you're going to meet a guy named Joseph and a fellow named Nicodemus. You're going to see him again. But we're not reading that far, so that's a good pickup. But we're going to let Joseph and Nicodemus stay off to the side. Go back to Jesus being on the cross. Go back to Jesus being on the cross. Find one set of red letters and you'll meet somebody. Mary. Mary who? Mary, the first one. The mother of Jesus. That's his mama, okay? All right, then there's Mary, who is the sister, and depending on who you read, probably is the sister-in-law of Mary, the mama of Jesus. But she's Mary, the sister, and then there's Mary Magdalene. And what do we know about Mary Magdalene, right quick?
She loves Jesus.
She loves Jesus a lot. You're going to see that when he's raised. But she had 7 demons cast out of her. So Jesus rescued her from lots of things, okay? So we're going to Mary Magdalene, the lady with the demons, all right? There's one other person you're missing. There's one other person, and it's a big one. And what you're doing is you're looking for a name. It never gives his name. The disciple whom Jesus loved. He's mentioned a couple of different times, but now I don't know for sure. The Bible never says for sure. Most of the experts, when you read, they say that the disciple whom Jesus loved, that's referred to in John, is the apostle, is the disciple John. So, for our purposes today, I'm writing up John. Now, whether that is the case or not, that's what we're going to say for today. Okay. All right. The the disciple whom Jesus loved. That's John. Okay. Now, anybody else? You see anybody else? Okay. I've got a runaway child here. Come here. Come here. Yeah. Yeah. You should be better at practicing social distancing. Yeah. Should you see your mama? Wave at everybody. Let's wave. Wave at the camera. Because we got to go to work. Yeah. We've got to go to work. I'm sorry. We've got to go to work. I'm not serious about that. Right, here's Mama. All right, you got it? John chapter 18, John chapter 19. Here's what we're going to do. I don't know that there's a story in the Bible any more powerful. I don't know that there's a story any more influential. I don't know that there's a story anywhere in the Bible more touching than this one. So rather than me preach at us, rather than me say this, 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 and this, what I'd like us to do is just read it together, okay? I want us to read it and react as if we were standing there. You got it? Chapter 18. When he had finished praying, that's when the disciples and him had finished praying. You remember they were in the upper room? Anybody remember they were in the upper room, right? Tell me, just so I know that you remember, what did they do in the upper room? What's one thing Jesus did? He washed their feet, all right? And then Jesus starts teaching them about what's about to take place. All right, so they've left the upper room. They crossed the Kidron Valley. On the other side, there's an olive grove. Those of you who are Bible scholars, tell me, what's the name of the olive grove? What's the name of the olive grove where they go to pray? They've been there before. They're going there again. It's Gethsemane. Yes, the Garden of Gethsemane. Now keep reading. On the other side, there was an olive grove, and his disciples went into it. Now, verse 2. Read with me. Stay with me. Now, Judas, who had betrayed him, knew the place. He knew the place because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. This was a place they went to regularly, so Judas knew where to find them. So Judas came to the grove, and look at the next phrase. Judas came to the grove to do what? To say, hi, Jesus, I want to thank you for being so good to me. I want to thank you for teaching me all these wonderful things. What's Judas doing? He's guiding the soldiers, a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and Pharisees. Now, you can make a little note if you want to, and you can look it up. You can look it up and do your own research. A detachment of soldiers is between 300 and 600 men. This is not a handful of little scruffy low soldiers. This is a detachment of 300 to 600 men. This is a big bunch of soldiers, and they come with a bunch of officials from the chief priests and the Pharisees. They also have some servants with them, we're going to find out. Now Jesus, now look, oh no, I need you to see the last phrase. Last phrase of verse 3, got it? What were they carrying? You read it so you know I'm not making this stuff up. I want you to see it. What are they carrying?
Torches and weapons.
They got torches and lanterns and weapons. So do they have swords? I don't think they're carrying pitchforks. They've got swords. They've got spears. They are coming prepared to fight, right? They're coming prepared for a fight. All right. They got torches. Why? It's dark. After supper, when Jesus and them left and went to the garden, it's dark. So what does it look like? I need you to see it. I need you to see it. Close your eyes a second and describe what it's got to look like. What does an olive tree look like? Anybody?
Not very big.
No, they're not real big, but they're all gnarly branches and they're all crooked, kind of like a mesquite tree would look. And so these fellows, 600 soldiers, are carrying torches and lanterns coming in, and they're carrying their weapons, and they're coming into this place. What does it look like?
An ambush is probably pretty loud.
I imagine it was loud. What does it look like? You can see them coming because you see the lights. The light's going to leave what? Shadows. So there's some weird looking shadows. This is good Halloween kind of scary you stuff. This is a creepy looking old place, right? So they come walking up. Now Jesus, does he know why they're there? Look at the next verse. Does he know why they're there?
Yes.
Does he know everything that he needs to know about everything that he needs to know? Yes. So he says, who is it that you want? You got it? Look at verse 4. Who is it that you want? And they announce, we're here to get Jesus of Nazareth. So here's Jesus' chance. What does he do? Here's Jesus' chance. What does he do? He can say, this fellow right here, he's Jesus. He can say, I don't know the man. What does he say? It's me. I'm he. Now Judas, where was Judas? Look in the text. Look in the text. Where was Judas?
Standing there with them.
He was standing there with them. Who's the them?
Soldiers.
The soldiers. He came to betray. He became to betray. One more time. He became to betray. And so he's standing with the folks that are going to take Jesus and kill him. Keep reading. And Jesus said, well, I'm he. And they drew back and fell on the ground. Can you give me any kind of reason where they might do that? Why might they fall back? Why might they be? Why might they fall back?
Probably not the answer they expected.
Right? They could have been, they could have been gung ho for a battle, and when the battle didn't take place, they fall back. Give me another reason they might fall back.
Probably what he's capable of.
Do they know what he's capable of?
So they've at least heard stories.
Folks, if we've read John, and we have, right? Do the people know that he's feeding hungry people with 5 biscuits and 2 fish? Is that story out there? That blind man, is that story out there? How about Lazarus, that dead man that came to life? Is that story out there? Yeah, and they're no longer denying that he did the miracles. What they're doing is saying, this fellow's got him, but we got to do something with him. So they send a bunch of soldiers, and with the soldiers' seed, they go, and they step back. Jesus says, who do you want? And he says, Jesus. They say, Jesus of Nazareth. He said, I told you I'm he. If you're looking for me, then take me and you leave these other fellows alone. Tell me what you just learned about Jesus. Tell me something you just learned about Jesus. It's not hard, but I'm going to give you time. What did you just learn about Jesus? If you're looking for me, take me, let these people go. He's not afraid.
He's a stand-up guy.
He's a stand-up guy. We live in a culture of throw you under the bus kind of people. Isn't that the truth? When things aren't going right, the way you take the heat off of you is mention somebody else, bring somebody else up, or throw some. Well, that's what they said. It happens in marriages. It happens in churches. It happens in business. It's amazing. Jesus is not a throw you under the bus kind of guy. You looking for me? Here, you talking to me, man? You talking? What's the name? I don't need to know the name. I don't care. I just like that phrase. You talking to me? And Jesus says, you talking to me? And they said, yeah, we're looking for you. And he said, then let these folks go. Keep reading. He said this happened so it would be fulfilled that the one that was lost, those that had been given to him, none of them would be lost. Now, the next thing that happens, I need you to look at verse 10 and tell me the first word. Just about the time that these fellows have figured out that Jesus is the one they came to get, and they're going to get him, what happens? Then, when they reach for him, you tell me, keep reading, Michael, what happens?
Then Simon Peter drew a sword.
Yeah, okay, now hang on. I went to a Christian college, I won't tell you where, will not tell you the teacher, doesn't matter. It's just a great story. I was a young guy, I was interested in the Bible, and I wanted to learn everything I could learn about the Bible. I'm sitting in class taking notes. Our teacher reads this passage, and he says, this verse proves to us that Peter was left-handed. Man, I was all in, man. I was taking notes and wrote in my, I bet you if you look in my file somewhere, I've got notes that said Peter was left-handed. And this verse is a reference. And here's what he said. Now, I need somebody to be an illustration. All right, very good. All right. I need you, stand right here. You got to get on there. Okay, there you go. Stand right there in the middle. Okay. This is Malchus. Okay? Malchus, Brad, that's Brad's middle name. Brad Malchus, okay? Now, Peter, I'll be Peter. if I cut off his right ear, that side of his head, here's what the teacher said, and I'm telling you the truth. He said that Peter was left-handed. He took his sword and cut off the man's right ear. Okay, so it had to be on this side, right? Okay, now hang on. Stay right there. Is that how you use a sword? And if you're in a fight for your life, are you going to try and cut his ear off? No. In fact, what you do is you pull your sword and you swing it. Now, is it real bright out there? No, you got some shadows, kind of hard to see. But Peter grabs his sword and he swings it. Now, if this is Malchus and he sees a sword coming for his head, what does Malchus do? He ducks. And when he ducks, Peter misses his head and catches his ear, right? Now, Malchus, first thing you do, the moment your ear flies off or tears off or whatever off, what do? Your first reaction?
I will scream and
There you go.
I'll either look for the ear or I'll probably try to fight
You're gonna get
the
somewhere.
person away.
Yeah,
You're gonna get somewhere. You're gonna move.
Yeah, you're going to get away from the fight.
Hold your-
You're going to hold your head. You're going to be screaming. All right, good. Thank you. You're a good Malchus. All right, so because we've got so many Brads, you're just Malchus from now on, okay? The moment he cuts off his ear, guy screams. What time of day is it?
Night.
It's dark, right? Oh, Malchus, does he fall on the ground? I don't know. But I know where Jesus, you'd have to read Matthew, Mark, and Luke. But you know where Jesus is? Peter's reloading his sword because he missed. He's fixing to do it again. And I know that because Jesus tells him, put that sword away. Because if Peter had made one swing and then stopped, Jesus wouldn't have had to tell him. But Peter's about to get him again and he says, put that sword away. Shouldn't I drink the cup that my Father's given me? In other words, Peter, we had this conversation. It's not my will, it's his will that's going to be done, right? So what's Jesus do? Now, you Bible scholars know. What does Jesus do? Matthew, Mark, and Luke.
Here's your ear.
He finds old Malchus's ear. If it was cut all the way off or if it's just flopping, I don't know. But Jesus does what? Heals that man's ear. I just learned something about Jesus, y'all. I just learned something about Jesus. He cares about people more than he cares about himself, right? It's worth remembering. All right. Peter puts his sword up. If you're a Bible scholar, tell me what the disciples do. What does Philip, Andrew, Matthew, Thomas, Bartholomew, Thaddeus, James the Less, Simon the Zealot, what do?
It's time to go.
They ran. Matthew, Mark, and Luke will say they deserted Jesus. Only leaves there's 3 disciples left. 3 disciples left. Judas, who kissed him on the cheek and betrayed him. Peter, who's fighting for him. Now keep reading. Verse 12. Then the detachment of the soldiers within it, with its commanders and Jewish officials, arrested Jesus. They bound him, all right, so they got him tied up, and they brought him first to Annas. You see? He, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jews that it was good for one man to die for the people. We talked about that a while back. Now, verse 15. Simon and another disciple were following Jesus. Okay? For our purposes, we're going to say John. Peter and John were following Jesus. Now, because John was known to the high priest, he went in with Jesus into the high priest's courtyard. Okay? Now, Peter had to wait. It says Peter had to wait outside of the door. Now, after John and Jesus go through the door, what does John do? You're going to have to tell me. I'm not responsible for all this. Look at verse 16. What does John do?
He spoke to the girl on duty.
He spoke to the girl on duty. the one taking tickets at the door kind of thing, and whispers something to her, and she lets Peter in. So what does the girl know?
But they're disciples.
That they're together. John was known there in the court, so he was allowed to come in with Jesus. Peter is allowed now to come in because John vouched for him. So the girl says, hey, you're not one of his disciples, are you? And Peter says, I know you know the answer, so I'm just going to wait. I'm not. Strike one. Jesus had said that's what was going to happen, and it happened. It was cold, and so the servants and the officials stood around a fire to keep them warm. And Peter was also standing with them, warming himself. I love how the Bible's just real. It's cold, y'all, so they build a fire. These are not flannel graph people. These are not gold-plated, mahogany carved little furniture pieces. These are real people, and they're cold. And so they build him a fire. Now, while Peter's warming himself, inside where the high priest is, he starts to question Jesus about his teaching. And Jesus responds. He said, I've spoken openly to the world. I've always taught in the synagogues or in the temple where all the Jews come together. I said nothing in secret. Why would you question me? Ask the ones who heard me teach. They'll tell you what I said. He was teaching them the truth. He was just saying, this is the truth. Verse 22. When Jesus said this, one of the officials did what? Read it I need to hear you say it. What did he do? Struck him in the face. Now we read that and we go past it. It's black and white. It's no big deal. What does it mean that they struck him in the face? No respect. What does it mean they struck him in the face? They hurt him. It hurt. This is a punch. This is a slap. This is a grown man hitting you, trying to get you to shut up because they think you've been disrespectful. Jesus said, if I said something wrong, tell me what I did. Tell me what I said that's wrong. But if I spoke the truth, why would you hit me? So they can't answer that, so what do? They ship him off to Caiaphas, the high priest. All right? They ship him off to Caiaphas because they can't handle him. Now, where's Peter? They're about to move Jesus. They're moving Jesus, but Peter's out there in the courtyard warming himself. Somebody says to him there, you're not one of his disciples, are you? And he denied it. I am not. Strike two. Now look at verse 26. One of the high priest's servants, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, challenged him. Hang on. This is the cousin. This is Malchus's cousin. Why would he have any reason to know who Peter was? Why would he have any reason to know who Peter was?
Because of his cousin that got his ear cut.
My cousin. You tell me that you don't tell your kinfolk? You wouldn't believe what they did to me at school. You wouldn't believe what they did. And look at all the stuff that's happening today. I mean, we tell people that somebody hurt us, somebody did something to us. This cousin's got the word. It had to be Peter. And Peter said, and verse 27 says, again, Peter denied it. And at that moment, the rooster began to crow. Stop. Those of you who are Bible readers, Matthew, Mark, and Luke tell you what. When Peter denies Jesus the third time, when the rooster crows, what does Jesus do? He turns and looks at Peter. What does Peter do? You remember?
Dies inside, runs out.
It says he runs out and weeps bitterly. Why?
Because he wanted to save Jesus, and he certainly knew he would never deny him, and he did.
He wanted to stand up for Jesus. He said, to die for Jesus. Jesus said, you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows, and Peter doesn't want to believe that, and it happened. And it breaks his heart Could I hang on? Where's Philip? Where's Thomas? Where's Matthew? Where's Thaddeus? They're hiding or on the run. Where is Judas? Those of you who've read your Bibles, where's Judas?
He's fighting his own demon.
Judas is trying to get the folks, the chief priests, the officials, to take their money back and to undo the mess he made. They won't take it back, so he throws the money at them and he runs out. Now he's going to run out and end up killing himself. But right now, he's just trying to undo this horrible thing he did. Keep reading. Then now we're just going to read this, okay? I need you to just hear it because it's better read and understood than me teaching. Then the Jews led Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanness, the Jews did not enter the palace. They wanted to be able to eat the Passover. They wanted to be clean, so they didn't go in the palace. Now, they didn't think a big deal about lying. They didn't think a big deal about murder, but they didn't want to go in a Gentile temple or palace to get unclean. They don't understand these folks. Pilate comes out. They've interrupted him. They've woke him up, and he comes out and says, "What charges are you bringing against this man?" He said, they don't even say what he did. They said if he wasn't a criminal, we wouldn't have brought him, would we? So Pilate takes him, says to them, "You take him and judge him yourselves. You've got your own law, but we don't have any right to execute anyone," the Jews objected. And this happened to be spoken so that Jesus had indicated the kind of death that he would die. Verse 33. Pilate then went back to the palace and summoned Jesus and said, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Time out. Sometimes people ask you a direct question is the time that you can sidestep, right? They ask, "We're looking for Jesus of Nazareth," and what does Jesus say? "It's me." Pilate says, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus says, now watch this. "Hey, is that your idea, or did somebody tell you about me?" What's Jesus wanting to do? Think it through. What's Jesus wanting to do? What does Jesus always want to do? He wants to teach Pilate. He's trying to set up a Bible study with Pilate. Are you interested? Are you really interested? Did you really want to know this? And Pilate replied, "It was your people and your chief priests who handed you over to me. What have you done?" And Peter said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight. But now my kingdom is from another place." Jesus is trying to teach Pilate. "You are a king then," said Pilate. And Jesus answered, "You're right, saying I'm a king. In fact, that's the reason I was born, and for this reason I came into the world, to testify to the truth. And everyone on the side of truth listens to me." Now stop a second. Jesus is begging with Pilate, trying to get Pilate to understand. If Pilate was willing to hear it, what would he say right about now? What did Nicodemus say? What did the woman at the well say? "I want it. Give me some of that. If you have the truth, I want it." Pilate does an old church house thing we do, is he asks a deflecting question. If you don't want to hear what somebody has to say, ask a question that's off the wall or out over here so they can get them distracted. He says, "What is truth?" And with this, he went out again and said, "Listen, I don't find any charge against him. I think I ought to release him." And then they won't let him release him. He said, "Do you want me to release the king of the Jews?" And they shouted back, "No, not him. Give us Barabbas." And they introduced a guy named Barabbas. We don't know anything about him except he took part in a rebellion. He took part in a mob scene. The kind of stuff that we're hearing, he took part in a mob scene. Now, they just asked Jesus to be crucified, or they're going to ask for Jesus to be crucified and this Barabbas guy, who was a criminal, to be released. Pilate took Jesus, 19:1. Pilate took Jesus and flogged him. We can't even imagine what that was like. Movies can't even begin to show us what that must have been like. Because even if the movie shows how gory and gross it was, it can't show the pain that Jesus had to have felt. They flogged him. They beat him. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They made a purple robe for him and put it on him. And again they mocked him. Hail, King of the Jews! And they struck him in the face. Where's Philip? Where's Thomas? Where's Matthew? Where's Thaddeus? Where's Simon the Zealot? Where's James the Less? They're hiding. Running or hiding. Where's Judas? Trying to undo his mess. Where's Peter? Crying. He's crying because he denied the one that loved him most. Keep reading. These folks are mocking Jesus, hitting him in the face. Pilate says to the Jews, hey, look, I'm bringing him out to you. I find no basis for charging it. He's hoping that beating him has done enough to satisfy them. And he brings them out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe and says, here is your man. And they start screaming, crucify him, crucify him. But Pilate answered, you take him and crucify him. And as for me, I find no basis of a charge against him. But the Jews insisted, we have a law, and according to the law, he must die because he claims to be the Son of God. Ding, 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 ding. They just said something that Pilate didn't know. Pilate has heard that he's the king. Pilate knows him to be an innocent man. Pilate's heard that he is the king, and now Pilate knows he may be the Son of God. When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid. Underline the word. Even more afraid. He went back inside the temple, the palace, and said to Jesus, who are you? Where are you from? And Jesus says, nothing. Gave him no answer. Do you refuse to speak to me? Don't you realize that I have power either to free you or to crucify you? Listen to Jesus' answer. He said, you have no power over me if it wasn't given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin. Verse 12, I want you to note it. From then on, Pilate tried to set Jesus free. What does Pilate know? Focus on Pilate for a minute. I've got the disciples running. Judas is trying to undo it. Peter's crying. At this point, we don't know where John is standing. But Pilate is trying to get him free. He's scared to death. These folks are screaming, crucify him, crucify him. These folks are beating him and mocking him. Why didn't Pilate just let him go? Why didn't Pilate just let him go? He knows he's an innocent man. It's not a big deal to him, but he thinks he may be the king of the Jews. Not a big deal to a Roman governor. He now knows and has been told that he's the Son of God. Why didn't he just let him go?
Politics.
Say it again.
Politics.
Politics.
The
You got it right.
atmosphere is tense. They've had rebellions, and there's this big crowd that's all agitated.
Yeah, have they got a guy that tried to cause a rebellion named Barabbas in jail? Yeah. And they're going to release him, so why not just release Jesus? Keep reading. The Jews kept shouting, if you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. And anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar. Now when Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judge's seat at a place known as Stone Pavement. It was the day of preparation for the Passover week. "Here is your king," he said to the Jews. He's hoping to mock them into giving up on it. And they shouted, take him away and crucify him. "Shall I crucify your king?" I want you to look at verse 15. I want you to look at what the Jews said. This is going to be significant years later. Pilate said, "Here is your king," and they said, "We have no king but Caesar." What did they just do?
They denied God.
They denied their king. They denied their God. Those of you who like to read your Bible and check things, write in the margin of your Bible, Psalm 2. The second Psalm is that statement being predicted. It's that statement being predicted. Finally, Pilate caved. We've never done that, but Pilate did. Pilate caved and handed him over to be crucified. Again, we're just reading. "So the soldiers took charge of Jesus, carrying his own cross out to the place of the skull. Here they crucified him with two others." And we miss these. Of all the people you mentioned, you miss these two. These guys matter at all? There's two people that are crucified with Jesus. Jesus is crucified in the middle of them. So there's one on his right and one on his left. There are two more people that are going to face what Jesus faced that day. Now, I got to give you a hint. If you get a chance, read Luke 23 and find out what happened to one of those fellas. All right, here we go. Now, Pilate had made a notice, prepared and fastened it to the cross, and it read, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." Many of the Jews read this sign, for the place that Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Aramaic, Latin, and Greek. Keep reading, verse 21. Now, the chief priests of the Jews didn't like this. They protested and said, "Don't say that he's the king of the Jews. Say that he claimed to be the king of the Jews." Now, Pilate has had enough of their mess, and he says, "What I've written, I've written." Now, watch what happens. When the soldiers who crucified Jesus, they took his clothes, dividing them into 4 shares, one for each of them. There was only the undergarment remaining. This garment was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. Don't tear it, they said. Let's decide who will get it. This happened so the scripture would be fulfilled. They divided my garments among them and cast lots for my clothing. So that's what the soldiers did. Folks, what are they doing? What are the soldiers doing? Now, they had a brutal job to do. They beat him. They stripped him. They mocked him. Put the crown of thorns on his head, the purple robe, and they're hitting him. They're abusive and brutal to him. That's their job. That's what they were told to do. But now what are they doing?
They are looting the
Gambling. They're mocking it. Do they have any care at all for the man that's suffering? Do they have any care? Well, is there anybody else there at the cross? Keep reading. Anybody else there at the cross? Okay, mamas, I want you to tell me. How's she feeling? How's his mama feeling? How's his mama feeling?
Like she wants to die. She wants to stop it.
She would trade places with him, wouldn't she? Now, I don't know her sister Mary, and I don't know the Mary that says is the wife of Clopas. I don't know. I don't know who she is. I don't know anything about her. When I get to glory, we can talk about it. But I know something about Mary Magdalene. How does Mary Magdalene feel? How does she feel about watching Jesus? Mary Magdalene had 7 demons. You think anybody cared much for her? And Jesus cast those demons out of her. How do you think she feels? What does she feel about Jesus?
If it wasn't for him, she wouldn't be who she
Exactly.
is.
She'd be willing to die for him too, wouldn't she? Oh, by the way, where's Peter? Crying. Because he didn't stand up for Jesus. Where's Judas? Yeah, looking for a piece of rope, isn't he? Where's Matthew and Thomas and Philip and Andrew? Where are they? Don't know. They're hiding. Mary, standing here grieving. Mary has to be doing the same, and Mary Magdalene's got to be brokenhearted. What am I going to do now, kind of thing. And the disciple Jesus loved, John. And Jesus sees them in the midst of all this horrible pain. Look at Jesus. Pay attention one more time to Jesus. And Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby. And he said to his mama, "Dear woman, here's your son." And to the disciple he said, "Here is your mother." What does John do? You tell me. From that day, he took her into his own home. He took care of her as if she was his mama. What did you just learn about Jesus?
Same thing we've been learning.
Yep, easy way to say it. Same thing we've been learning. He cares about people more than he cares about himself. Now, we're going to stop there. We're going to read one more paragraph before we remember Jesus, but I want you to talk to me. In that story, took us a while to read through it. We see all kinds of different people in and around Jesus, for and against Jesus. All right? I believe, if we're honest, we can see ourselves here somewhere. You can find yourself somewhere on this board. I think I have met people, even in church houses, that are a whole lot like Pilate. They know some things about Jesus, but they don't have any interest. And they'll use Jesus for their benefit. Maybe the husband of a fella, the husband of a lady who is a Christian, and he'll go to church with her to kind of keep peace. Or it may be a lady who will show up at church with her husband because he's a Christian, and she just wants to kind of keep peace and keep the kids happy, kind of thing. Sometimes, though, there are people sitting in church that I think are like these old boys. They know all the rules, but they don't care a lick about Jesus. And they sure don't care a lick about people that care about Jesus. Not asking for names, but have you ever seen that attitude in church? Where what matters more than anything else is keeping the rules. They're worried about a room they go into making them unclean. And they don't care at all for the fact that they're lying about the Son of God. And they're committing murder of the Son of God.
It seems like it's not just keeping the rules, it's keeping the rules for the purpose of keeping their power,
Yeah.
their status.
And that's the point. And have you seen it? Have you ever seen it in church where people keep up the pretense and they quote the scriptures and they dress the part and they act that part, but they're just trying to keep up the facade? It happens. And sometimes there's people that just get caught in the middle. They don't really know anything about Jesus. They've heard some things. And Jesus has done nice things for them. But they're basically just caught in between, and if whichever way the crowd goes, they'll go. And whatever they're told, that they do. These are the folks that speak to me the most. Has it ever been possible that those of us who followed Jesus and betrayed him have just decided, I'm done with Jesus. I want what I want. And some of us have gone so far as then we just give up on Jesus. There are people that used to sit in this room that have just given up on Jesus. They've gone back to their old way of life. They've betrayed what they believe about Jesus. And then there's some of us that I think probably are like Peter. We want to follow Jesus. We want to be dedicated to Jesus. But what happens? Impulses get the best of us and we just fly off the handle, or we do something stupid and we don't know how to make it right. Now we're going to find out from Peter how to make it right, or Jesus is going to teach him how to make it right. And then some of us, I think I know some people who are like John, who love Jesus and know there's nothing they can do to stop this mess. They just have to grieve. John and his new mama Mary, this Mary, whoever she was, cared about Jesus enough to be there. And Mary Magdalene, I know some folks like that, whose lives have been changed because of what Jesus did for them, and they don't care what anybody else thinks. They're all for Jesus. So where are you? Where are you? I'll let you think about that. Then when we remember Jesus, maybe we can talk about it. Verse 28. Last paragraph we're going to read. Later, knowing that all was now completed, and so that the scripture could be fulfilled, Jesus said, I'm thirsty. The one who offered that woman the water of life dies thirsty. It's sad, isn't it? And I wonder if that woman had been there. If she could have had a chance, you think she'd have done something to help Jesus get a drink? Well, they offered him some vinegar. And when he received the drink, he said, it is finished. And with that, he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. What's finished? What's finished? What does Jesus mean it's finished? What had to happen for him to do what God had sent him to do. Remember early on when we started reading John? They say he's the Lamb of God who's come to take away the sins of the world. That's what he's doing. Has he done it for all these Jews and the high priests and the officials? Has he done it for the soldiers and the servants and the cousins? Has he done it for the disciples and all those who followed him? He's done what his Father sent him to do. And it is